Okay, let's get right to it. We're going into the month of July. Of course, this is the heart of summer now. And this is your Adisseo and Novak weather update for the month of July. All right, we usually talk about at least what happened last month a little bit during these briefings. And this is showing you how much precipitation, this is what we call the anomaly, so departure from normal over the United States. This is again, through June. I'm going to put this into motion for you. A couple of things I want you to focus on is look at how dry it was to start off June. This is early June now. Look how dry it was over Texas with precipitation way below normal for that 30-day period heading into June. Now watch what happens as we put this into motion. And you will see that there was some precipitation across the central portions of the U.S. as we were in the first half of June, but in all, much of the United States, especially the agricultural regions of the United States, have been dry. In fact, I put this on the last frame here now. This is now through the 30-day period of June, okay? All in all, look how dry it has been, indicative of the red colors across much of the United States east of the Rocky Mountains. The only wet areas east of the Rockies are in the Central Plains. It would be Kansas, portions of Oklahoma and Arkansas. Of course, North Dakota and northern Minnesota, they've been wet for many months now. And then southern Florida. But in general, again, we've dried out quite a bit across the United States during the month of June. All right, looking ahead. Here's what we got. We call these the 500 millibar anomalies. So this is at about 20 to 25,000 feet in our atmosphere. And I really want you to focus on these blue areas here. These are lowering heights or an atmosphere that is contracting and usually is indicative of storms in a colder pool of air in our atmosphere. Now this is as we first start off here in early July here, you can see that there's a pretty cold pool of air over Canada. And there is a northwest flow or a west and northwest flow in our atmosphere across much of North America. That's keeping a good chunk of Canada and portions of the Great Lakes region a little bit cooler than normal. Now look at what happens as we get into this first week of July. The cold pool of air rotates over eastern Canada, so they're going to be cold up there for at least the first week or two of July, and that cold air is going to spill southeast, or at least cooler air will spin southeast into the northeastern sections of the United States. And then as we go through the second week of July, this is kind of important, you can start to see a warm bubble of air, or what we call a ridge, developing over much of the United States, in fact, much of North America, and then extending north into southern Canada as a trough starts to dig out in the western U.S. So this is in sharp contrast to what's happening today as we go into the middle portions of July, as a trough digs out west during the middle portions of July, and then a ridge builds or expands over much of the central and portions of the eastern sections of the United States and southern Canada. That would be the southern prairies of Canada. What that means is that there is going to be quite a bit of warm air and air from the desert southwest that's going to migrate north and northeast into much of the U.S. And I'm expecting some pretty hot, unusually hot and dry conditions to develop during the middle and latter portions of July in much of the country east of the Rocky Mountains. All right, the jet stream, the river Ver at 30 to 35,000 feet. We're going to focus here on at least the first 10 or 12 days here of July. And here it is. We have what's called a zonal flow for at least about the first week of July across southern Canada and the northern sections of the United States. Now, the hope is that we're going to get some nocturnal, or what we call ring of fire thunderstorms, to develop. They'll be scattered, but we're hoping that they're going to develop over the upper Midwest and northern plains and then race east and southeast into the Corn Belt. We'll see if that happens. We can hope, right? And meanwhile, it's just going to be hot and dry, I think, over much of the southern plains. Even the first week of July looks hot and dry over the southern plains. And then, as I mentioned, as we get into the second week of July, you can see a ridge now, and a big one, developing and expanding over much of the southern and central portions of the United States. And that, I don't think there's any doubt that as we head into the second week of July, that ridge is only going to pump up further north and extend into the southern prairies of Canada. And that would leave much of the United States in a real hot and potentially dry atmosphere. All right. What are we expecting here with Novak weather and Adisseo? Well, here it is. I think for the most part, July is going to be, from a temperature standpoint, is going to be above normal for areas east of the Rocky Mountains, not only in the United States, but also in southern Canada, as that jet stream migrates and surges north into Canada. Meanwhile, cold fronts and cool fronts are going to try to penetrate south into the mid-Atlantic areas and maybe even the deep south of the United States. But of course, they'll get held up. But that should provide at least some relief and some rain over the eastern U.S., especially over the Carolinas as we go through the month of July. And then we're going to have some typical tropical rains. You don't hear that very often in the desert Southwest, but these are going to be some tropical rains in the desert Southwest, and that should help them out in their drought conditions down there. Now, speaking of the rains, here it is with the dry, hot air and that jet stream surging well north into Canada. I'll be surprised if we get much rain over central and northern and southern sections of the heart of the United States, that is, as rain. And I think it should be a lot of it will help out areas of the southeastern U.S. They've actually been surprisingly dry over much of the southeastern U.S. over the last month. And then, as I mentioned, rains in the desert Southwest. The drought index map, by the way, and this is pretty interesting too. Look how dry it is over Texas. This is a pretty serious drought over much of the state of Texas and then extending north into western sections of the plains of the United States. I think this area is going to have an increasing area of drought here as we go through July, with little in the way of widespread rains over the central and southern sections of the United States. As I had also mentioned, the southeastern U.S., even though they've been dry here the last month, I think they're going to get quite a bit of rain here as we get into July. And good news for those of you in North Dakota and northern and central Minnesota where it has been so wet, and that would include Manitoba and portions of Saskatchewan and southern Canada. I think they're going to dry out for the most part here as we go into July, with only scattered showers and storms occasionally developing and moving east and southeast in that ring of fire pattern. Remember, the jet stream is going to be oriented like this as we go through most of July. All right, that is your forecast, your 30-day forecast for July from Adisseo Novak Weather. Thank you for joining me.